Fire away.
Alex, that play by Delarian, you've talked about that before. You want your guys to never give up on a play. That's the perfect example, right?
Great
what
example.
it can do.
Well, and what you can't do is have a fan reaction, which I'm guilty of so often. Is you get so angry at that particular play. Why is it break? How can we let that happen? And sometimes in the moment you get lost to the side that they didn't do this at the end of it. And when they don't do that at the end of it, it means there's 3 more downs to obviously get a stop, an opportunity to get a takeaway even, to eliminate any points being had. But no, I think that if you had to circle one play, probably my favorite play of the day other than the takeaway late, it just you're never out of the fight. And so much of football, the sport is hard. The opposing team conspires against you. You're not immune. What we do over the course of a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, does not give us immunity on Saturdays to bad things happening. Now, again, we'll correct those issues. It doesn't make that play okay, but in the moment, all you can do is find a way to get the ball carrier on the ground, and then obviously you did the best job you can to keep points off the board. But yeah, pretty indicative of what we talked about. Also, from the standpoint of making teams count in threes, makes it very, very difficult to have a competitive Saturday for an opponent against with the type of offense that we have.
What stood out to you about those 3 next plays after that? And how does that magnify what Delarian did there?
Well, honestly, and what stood out is why don't we have that aggressiveness on the play before that broke? Why is it that we have to be in that situation to all of a sudden, have guys play downhill like that? I don't think that has to be on the goal line to play that way. And that wasn't some magic call where we're, all of a sudden we just, turn everybody loose and just let's all blitz everybody. That wasn't that. And then when we have similar calls in the field. And so that's kind of the message that we have with the guys at halftime is why all of a sudden, from a situational standpoint, it dictates how we play. But what stood out, again, was just the aggressiveness, the want to, and I guess the mental fortitude, mental toughness to find a way to get a stop down there and hold them to a field goal. So certainly some that's a positive. And what you can now do is you got video evidence. You can now show them and say, this is what we're talking about. It can be done, should be done, and we can find a way to get it done.
Forced fumble by Neville later in the game. That was an effort play, too. He gets blocked off the sack and then comes back and hits him. How do you coach guys to give that kind of effort? Because truthfully, it's been lacking the last few years.
Well, sure. Number one, we demand it. There's the negative side of it where we recognize, from a behavior standpoint, when it's the effort's not right, we're pretty forthright in letting those guys know. And so that's number one. And obviously, that's the negative motivation side. But being absolutely unrelenting from a coaching standpoint. Obviously, him with Coach Tibbs with the front. But it's not okay to not give effort. It's not okay to give effort. And so one of the things we talk about is if we don't give effort, if we're not recognized for effort at University of Oklahoma, then I'm a con man and they're a fraud. So if I'm going to stand up in front of them, number one, and then number two, obviously in front of you all, and say it's an effort-based defense, it's all about effort, and all of a sudden on Saturdays it's an option whether or not we give it. Then again, it is a direct correlation or direct reflection of our inability to get it out of our guys. And so it's just a constant demand. Our Monday practice doesn't look a whole lot different than a Saturday game. I mean, we don't take any steps back in terms of tempo and those things. And so that's just something that, again, you're one play away from being that average effort group. So it's not as if you get that. That's something you check the box. It's fixed. So it's something that's obviously ongoing. But that's what it comes down to. Is just a constant demand.
Your safety play that was discussed some this week. Sure. How did you think that group?
I think there was some, did some good work that way. Some of these games are, and I've talked about it before. They're so unique on each, given set. How are they attacking you? What's the game plan against you? Are they going to focus on the run, focus on the pass? What's the scoreboard? How's that impact things? So that's a long answer, but no, I've been overall pleased with those guys. And again, this was another game that I don't know the exact number of guys we ended up getting in the game, but I'm sure it's in the 30s, and that's something that we got to make sure that on Monday and Tuesday of next week, if you got a game today, good Lord, you better have a good Monday. because we got to reap the benefits of some of that work. But the idea of rotation there is still an ongoing kind of theory right now that we haven't quite secured yet.
You talk about rotation. Is it hard to rotate guys in the middle of drives? Is it typically you want to end the drive with who you start out there?
It varies. It varies, and obviously positionally, I think it's a little bit different. Certainly in the front, with the big guys, if you want to have a pass rush over the course of a drive, you'd like to rotate those guys. Sometimes on the back end, I'm trying to think of a good example. Maybe in basketball, if you don't get enough, run down up and down the court, you don't really get in the flow of a game. And so for a corner, if you rotate them every 4 plays, they may not have seen a pass in that time. And so you maybe a little bit more conscious to go by series. But with those guys up front, if able, you'd like to rotate those guys on a play-to-play basis. But that's different for each individual guy, not just individual positions.
You also talked about not being motivated extra in certain situations, but did you get a sense that it seemed like your guys came out very fiery after what happened to Kennedy? I mean, did you notice that as well?
Oh, I did. I mean, you could feel the stadium at that point. There's the negative side of me that says, why does it take that to get fired up? And so that's part of it. And that's something also that you address as a coach. But the point being that as you made it is, I think you saw a group of guys that took advantage of an opportunity in the game from kind of a momentum that was against us, that you kind of flipped it on its head. And I think it's a pretty good example also from a crowd standpoint, the impact that they can have for us.
Even on that drive, you had back-to-back 15-yard penalties. I mean, is that sort of a balance of? I mean, they were obviously fired up and playing aggressive, but had the penalties. I mean, how do you address that?
Yeah, and what you can't do is, as a coach, you can't say penalties are okay. You can't go down that road. You go because it becomes a slippery slope. Dumb penalty on the sideline. Parnell Motley, that's not him. He can't be that. Our guys can't do that. We're not going to say that's okay. In Buki's case, an aggressive penalty. Sometimes you have the mercy of kind of where the ball carrier's body kind of ends up as you're making contact. But you still got to be smart in those scenarios. And the consistent thing as points have been scored on us this year has been aided by penalties. And so it's hard enough to play defense when you're doing everything right, to give guys extra downs and extra yards and all those things is something that we got to do a better job of.
Alex, your thoughts on Trajan and just how he played? You talk about penalties, is that just being aggressive, mental mistakes and such?
Well, it's one of those things that we so badly wanted to get him out there, get kind of rip the Band-Aid off in terms of lining up on defense. It's one thing to say that a guy's going to take a look at another positions. It's another thing to actually go out there and do it on a game, and then it's another thing to do it in the indoor and practice, let alone to do it in a Big 12 football game. And so that's just something that need to have happen. Try to be aggressive in coverage, and then kind of the second one, kind of an oddball play in terms of that guy's going to the ground and get the hand into the face. So excited that we had a chance to work with him over the last couple of weeks, and we'll kind of see where that goes.
It's hard to ask this question with taking penalties out of the equation. So if it's possible, do. If it's not, no. But those 3 snaps after the interception that we were just talking about, I presume you can play on such an edge that it's counterproductive.
Sure.
And they had to be revved high, and yet they made 3 terrific, defensive plays afterwards. Does that tell you something about your defense? Do you learn something?
Oh, I think that in those moments when a bad play occurs, regardless of why, what, how, all those things, is you're always one play away from turning the tide, from flipping the momentum, and I truly believe that if you're able to, and again we didn't take advantage of those because of the penalties necessarily, at least the initial plays. But what you saw was that want to that's saying, okay, let's flip adversity on its head, and that first and 10 that turns into a second and 10, immediately momentum's back on our side. If we're one play away at that point, we can handle our business on second down, because now we get a chance in the third down scenario to get off the field. And so I think kind of buy in terms of one play doesn't turn into 2 defensively, but also one negative play from a special team standpoint or offensive standpoint that we still have a chance to respond. And so, no, there's some positives there.
Lincoln talked about having confidence in the defense, and it's just growing as the season progresses. So he says you could go out against Kansas next week, and if things go right, considered a phony. Is that something y'all push and talk to them about each and every week?
Well, and I've talked about it in here. It's always 1 week evaluations. it's golf. I mean, you birdie the first hole. If you triple bogey the second, it doesn't do you a whole lot of good in the scoreboard from a round of golf. And so in any event, it's the same thing with our sport. It just is. You know, you handle your business week one. You got to do the same. You don't get credit for that. Week two, week three, subsequently as you go through this thing. So no, you're always have to be on edge. You're never there, and that's not coach speak. That's reality. It's sport. It's hard. Winning's hard. Playing competitive defense is hard, you got to make sure that from a preparation standpoint, you're doing the right things every single day, each week, to earn the right to perform the right way on Saturday. And if you don't do it next week, then football has a way to wake you up if you start feeling too good about yourself.
Alex, do you like how sure of themselves your guys look right now?
I think it's a confident group. I think again that's earned. You know, kind of back to the last question. I mean, you earn that as you go. It's not make believe. As a coach, you can again spin any tail that you want to try to create that. But once you get in, and that's in spring ball, fall camp. But once you get into the season, the film's the film on Saturdays, and so I think that's number one. I think they've seen it work on Saturdays. I think they've seen themselves performance-wise on Saturdays, and I think it's also created over the course of the week of practice. They feel like they're prepared walking into the stadium on Saturday, and I think probably the biggest thing with that, I think these guys expect to perform at a certain level. And so you see some frustrated faces, after series, after plays, because they don't think it's okay. You know, the days of us having to say it's not okay, are slowly slipping away, which is good. So no, that speaks to confidence, and it's gain on game day, but you got to make sure you do it during the course of the week.
Is it a culture thing? Like, do you feel like you're creating a culture, I mean, even 4 games in, to where you think that it's getting to almost where you would like it to be?
You like to think that. You'd like to think that, and you're so protective of that you don't want to go down that road. I mean, it's like we'll evaluate this thing in end of January and kind of talk through culture at that point. But no, it was a good performance today, and a lot of things we continue to need to improve on.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, guys.